Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the JBDC's Virtual Biz Zone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. My name is Sansia Campbell, and I am the Public Relations and Events Coordinator here at the Jamaica Business Development Corporation. Now, as you would already know, the JBDC Virtual Biz Zone is a platform that the JBDC uses to sensitize and update our core client group, that is our MSME clients, regarding the many developments in the post-COVID era. These webinars started way back in April 2001, and we have stuck to our mission of providing a platform for conversation, discussing topical issues, and supporting our MSMEs in this very difficult time. Hence, this morning's session will discuss what has become a touchy issue, but we will discuss it nonetheless. So the theme for this morning is Job or Jab, balancing HR and business in the pandemic, right? Now, as I said, the theme has created some furore, but the reality is that if JBDC is to remain true to its mandate, we cannot shy away from the issues of the day. And so this morning's session is intended to explore how businesses will continue to operate effectively and profitably within the context of COVID-19. So we have two illustrious speakers with us this morning, and they are Ms. Desrine McFarlane, who is a human resource consultant, leadership coach, and keynote speaker. She is the owner and the CEO of Legacy HRM. And we also have with us attorney at law, dispute management practitioner, and senior lecturer in the Faculty of Law at the University of West Indies, Dr. Christopher Malcolm. Now, our first speaker this morning is going to be talking to us on the main theme, which is balancing business and HR in a pandemic, and that's Ms. Desrine McFarlane. And then Dr. Malcolm will speak to us on workplace dispute management implications of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, both of our speakers come to us with a wealth of knowledge in their areas of expertise. And as such, they are well equipped to provide invaluable information in this morning's session. I trust that this morning's session will be particularly informative. It will answer some questions that you may have in your mind, and it will also give you an opportunity to pose those questions that you want to pose. Before we welcome the speakers, though, I want to remind you that you can drop your questions in the chat or raise your hand, and then we will be able to facilitate the questions as it becomes convenient. Additionally, the presentation is being recorded and it will be available on the JBDC's YouTube channel post this presentation. So without further ado, let me hand over to Ms. McFarlane, and she will speak to us, as I said, on the main topic, which is balancing business and HR in a pandemic. So it's over to you, Ms. McFarlane.
Thank you, Sansil. Good morning, everyone. And thanks to JBDC for this invitation to talk about this very important topic. When I first got it, I wanted to decide which angle to come from, talking to MSMEs. But then I'm a business owner as well. I could call myself a small business owner. So I think that from that perspective, my perspective would be relevant to you. Now, as I have been talking to my clients and talking to individuals, one of the things that I've been thinking about is, how did we get here? Where we are today in a tug of war, how did we get here? And in order to really tap into this topic, in order to unpack it in a, I would say, comprehensive way, we have to look at how we got here, because I think that is what's going to lead us how to get out of here. So, very provocative topic: job or jab, balancing business and human resource in a pandemic. Now, one of the things that we all need to consider, we are all human resource, all of us. The term people or most valuable resource has been touted for many years, and it is actually true. The virus has targeted not dogs, not cats. I don't hear of animals dying from the virus, although I hear some animals were tested positive, but it's really affecting mankind, the human race, everywhere in the world. And we must agree that in our lifetime, we have never seen anything like this. My dad is 84 years old, and he has never seen anything like this. It is novel, it is new to all of us. And then we are in the technological age as well. And technology is driving information. And information has become a problem because we do not know nowadays what is true and what is false. And I am surprised when people told me that I did some research, and then I said, oh, that's fantastic. Tell me, is there a website? No, 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 no. I went to YouTube and I watched some videos. I was on Facebook. Somebody sent something to me, and that is research. Ladies and gentlemen, research is now what you get in your feed, not what you intentionally decided to go and to explore, to see the facts about. And so all of that is going to come into context this morning as I present. From time to time, I'm going to share my screen, then I'm going to be off screen, then I'm going to be back on screen, sorry. But for now, I'm going to bring up my presentation. So I'm going to share my screen. And I am certain that you can see my screen because it was set up. So there I am, wondering, how did we get to the point of job or jab? Well, it is because we are now facing or anticipating a vaccine mandate, and it is scaring people all over the world. This vaccine passport, this thing to say that I have been vaccinated, and it has been touted as a violation of religious right, parental right, your body, the ownership of your body, then your job, your right to work, your right to travel, and all of that. So what is the rationale behind the talk of a mandate? And I want to posit first that if we were doing the right thing across the world, we would not need a vaccine mandate. If everyone was being responsible right around the world, we would not be talking about mandates. My second question, if we're talking about the mandate, vaccine mandate, is it a matter of public health and safety, or is it something more sinister? Is it the mark of the beast? Is it mind control? Is it to manage your God gene? Is it to ensure that there's a chip inside you that you're followed while you're already followed because there's a chip in your cell phone? What is the idea behind the mandate? I want you to think about that. Is there actually any good reason to consider jab to keep your job? Now, I spoke to someone recently who offers home care for individuals who are indigent. Now, their family has decided that they should not be vaccinated because they are in their homes, they are not moving, that kind of thing. They're right. And of course, they have all kinds of underlying conditions as well. So you can understand. Some of the doctor says, no, leave those alone, they're not moving. And they are now saying to that person, I understand that the people who are vaccinated have a lower viral load. So they are vaccinated, plus they wear the mask and they do the hand sanitization and all of that. You can't social distance for this job. It's bathing people, it's taking care of people, it's combing their hair. So it requires that human contact, right? Let me come off screen for a minute there. This particular job, this requires human contact. So how then does that person say, well, my team say they're not getting vaccinated? So what happened to that person's business? Just think about it. What happens to that care business that goes to do this, that used to provide people their livelihood? And people are not even thinking about their livelihood. They are thinking about, I have the right to work, to do this work the way I want to do it. But the customer is saying, no, I require something different. I want to know that you are vaccinated. What do you say to that business owner? Do you see any YouTube and Facebook post about that? No, absolutely not. So, food for thought, right? Real food for thought. So, let's move on. So, what do we know about COVID-19? Because in order to really put this thing into context, what do we know about COVID-19? One, it is real, but we cannot see it. And may I add, whether it's man-made or it came about by its own evolution, it doesn't matter. It is real, and we cannot see it. We cannot get a bottle and trap it and put it away. It is in every country, everywhere across the world. It is a danger to the health and wellness of the world's human resources. It's not just Jamaica. The human resource of the entire world is at risk because of COVID-19. That is a fact. Next, it is highly contagious, and it is no respecter of persons. It infects and kills people of all ages, nationality, color, creed, religion. It even killed the people who said it is the flu, the people who are bent on showing. I know at least 2 persons who are dead now who were bent on demonstrating that COVID-19 was nothing but the flu. So they didn't care about mask wearing, they didn't care about social distancing and sanitizing and all of those things. And even when they were sick, they say, oh, just watch me, I'm gonna boil up something. And now they are in the morgue or in their grave. Now, there's the other argument. If you get COVID-19, you have natural immunity. Then can someone tell me why there are people who I know, at least 2 persons that I know personally, that got COVID-19 last year and they got it this year, and this year it took them to their deathbed. So the old notion that if I should not need a vaccine if I got the virus because I can't get it again, I have natural immunity. So why are people getting it twice? Those are questions that you need to answer if you have those beliefs. So these are facts about the virus, and there are many other facts, but I just wanted to bring up these for the time being. I'll get into a few more as I go along. Now, yesterday I was going through Instagram and I saw this, and I'm sure Dr. Malcolm is going to talk about it. Is a vaccine mandate illegal? This is what the Bar Association says. Mandatory vaccination not likely to be regarded as unconstitutional. As I said, if we were all doing what we are supposed to be doing, we would not be here. But now the lawyers are telling us that saying it's against the law is not going to work. And I'm going to show you why. Because the people who say they do research, when I share my research, some of them are dumbfounded as to what I have found. Now, while everyone is vulnerable, we all, because as long as you're a person, from the tiniest, the newborn, to the oldest, we are vulnerable. The people who must interface with other people are at greater risk. And I just gave you an example, right? People who teach our children. You want the children to get out of the home and go to school. Excuse me, you don't want them to be vaccinated. You don't want them to wear the mask. It is impossible really to have real social distancing all the time when it comes to kids, right? You want the teachers to go into the room as well and teach the children. They're vulnerable. What is the solution? Is it a robust immune system? Because I am not afraid to share. I think this particular presentation has caused me to be very personal, and it's going to be on YouTube. Not that I wanted to share so much, but the presentation caused me to do so. I have lupus. I have been boosting my immune system for years. I got diagnosed in 2006. Why then am I not cured if boosting an immune system can take care of everything? So I've asked that question. Why am I not cured? And then persons tell me that, oh, so you have the religious side of people, the religious people, it's because you do not have enough faith. Oh, but why didn't you tell me that all along? Why is COVID-19 the reason that you're going to tell me that the reason why I am suffering this debilitating illness for such a long time is a lack of faith? Because if you boost the immune system and you have faith, then you can't get sick. All right, I deviated. These are the people who prepare our meals. And I don't know about you, but I love to cook, but sometimes I love to go to a restaurant and sit and have a nice meal, especially something that I can't do that well. I do. They are the people that care for us, our nurses and our doctors. When we're ill, don't we want to know that they are well? Next, they produce goods and services we need. Not everybody can work from home. There are things that cannot be done from home. The people have to go into the lab and to do tests and so on. The medical people, also people that goes into the factory and make the things that we need to survive or for a business to operate, or even your business as well. Depending on what you do, you need to be somewhere. You need to feel a sense of safety, not fear, a sense of safety. Remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Safety is up there as one of the big needs that we have. We want to have that sense that we are not going to just drop down and die or get infected with something. And then we have the people, the grocers who retail. Even if we order it online, somebody has to pick it and carry it to us. Not everything can be done virtually. There are people involved in doing a lot of things. Tell me how the firefighter is going to out the fire virtually. Tell me how the police and the security guard is going to get the criminal virtually. It is not possible. And also, we were made for fellowship and friendship and hugging and so on, and just talking to people and being together. But unless we break the back of this pandemic, that's not possible for most people, except those who are so extreme that they're willing to risk their lives for it. Are you one of those persons? Today, I want to speak to your mind. This presentation is less about perception and it's more about the truth. So I want to engage your minds for the next few minutes. Your minds. I want you to think about the things that I'm positing. I want you to think about them carefully as a business owner. Back to my slides. Now, perspective. And I hope everybody can see my slides. perspective. Vaccine mandates in Jamaica.
Hi, Desrine. Just interrupting for 1 second. Is it possible for you to put it on full screen?
It's not on full screen?
No, it's not.
Oh, I didn't know that. Sorry.
Yeah, we'll be able to see it a lot better.
All right. Yeah, I thought it was on full screen. So let me close it and bring it back up.
All right, thank you.
All right. And it has been like that all this time?
Yes, it has. Yes.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
All right. Share and let me know now if it's on full screen. Is it?
Good to go, good to go. Thank you.
Perfect. All right, all right, all right. My apologies. Now, yes, perspective. People, when you talk about research, this is the type of research that would be very helpful to all of us. You see, we got vaccinated when we did not make the decision. We could not make the decision, and we took a lot of vaccines. If we didn't take them, we couldn't go to school. We could not get an education. So vaccine mandates are not new in Jamaica. And that is why the legal side will say, what is going to be the argument that we're going to make when we have been mandating vaccines all this time? Now, let's go down. I really want to go through it. From birth, we have to take the one that we have the thing on our arm, the BCG. And then persons say, and why it has to be more than one? And why if you take the two, it can't last? Here we go. 6 weeks, first polio and diphtheria and hepatitis B. 3 months, second polio, second hepatitis B and diphtheria. 6 months, third polio, third hepatitis B and diphtheria. 12 months, first MRR. That's the mumps, measles and rubella. We have been able to eradicate things from Jamaica through vaccines. Vaccines work. And I know some of you do not want to hear it, but here is the research. You have many of these vaccines, if not all, in your body already. And I have a couple more than that. Then 18 months. And look, at 18 months, you have to get another booster for polio. Another booster for diphtheria. Vaccine mandates are not new. 4 to 6 years old, look again, a second booster port for polio and a second booster for diphtheria. And from time to time, when you have to travel to different countries, there are mandated vaccines that you have to take. And over the years, if you have traveled like me, you have taken them. Yellow fever vaccine to go to Panama, all different kind of vaccine to go to Costa Rica, vaccines to go to China, vaccines to go to Europe. Yes. And we have we get the thing, we read it, and we take them. So what is the problem right now? What is happening right now? What is causing us to be the way we are? The greatest challenge to balancing business and human resource in the current climate is not the virus, and it's not the vaccine. I promise you. This is it. It is misinformation, lies, rumors, people pretending to be medical people. I don't know if you've had the same experience. Let me talk to you. I don't know if you've had the same experience, but I had no idea that I knew so many doctors, people that I've known for years. I had no idea that they had medical training. They're telling me now that, yes, I did biology in school. And when I did biology in school, I learned that a vaccine took at least 10 years to develop. So then I asked the questions, what about technology? What about having the base for vaccines? as my research has shown, oh, no, there can be no base. And technology should not be used for vaccine production. These are people that I've known for years who are telling me that they are medically trained because now it suits them to say that they are medically trained, that they delve deeply into biology. And so they have the answers to all our questions. Please let me know in the chat if you're still seeing the big screen. I hope so. Now, why do we have so much misinformation? The first thing is COVID-19 is unique. It's a novel coronavirus. Coronaviruses has been around for a long time. Many strains of the flu are coronaviruses. That is why you would see it on the different things that, okay, if you use this, it will help with coronavirus. But COVID-19 is a different animal, and it is impacting the entire world at the same time. That is something that we have never seen before. And as a result, it causes us to question, and there's no problem with questioning. There's absolutely no problem. Question all you want. But remember, when something is novel, the science that applied to the others, the solution did not work. It did not work for COVID-19. And people have tried it, as I said, and it did not work. They say, I'm going to prove it's just a normal coronavirus, and it has killed them. I want you to consider that. Which brings us to this. Mask, the wearing of masks, social distancing, hand sanitization or hand washing, and the vaccine. These are the solutions that we have. These are the solutions that we have at our disposal. There's nothing more. Someone asked me, have you stocked up on hydroxychloroquine because I know that you have lupus? I said, no, I've not. I'm not going to stock up on additional hydroxychloroquine to fight COVID-19. Because if it could fight COVID-19, then if you think I'm taking it, then I should not need to stock up. I would not have it. I would not be susceptible to COVID-19. See, the argument doesn't even hold water. Why will I stock up? No, if I've been using it, it's been in my body for lupus, then I should be immune from the virus, right? But they're encouraging me to stock up just in case I get the virus. But I should be able to get the virus if hydroxychloroquine could release me of it. I hope I'm making sense. All right. So why so much information? The influence of social media. Any person, my friends, can put a scrub on and tell you how to run your business and how to run your life. And when you get sick and when your business folds, those people are silent. One, you can't even reach them because you do not know them. Majority of them you do not know. Suspicions about the origin of the virus. And I'm happy to tell you this. I don't know how the virus came about. But for me, it doesn't matter. The virus exists. I know people that have had it and recover, and I know people who have had it and die. It is real. Then there is the uncertainty created by conspiracy theorists. It's Bill Gates that is trying to control your mind. It is for population control. It is for mind control. It is to inject you with a chip that they can follow you. And they are already following you with your cell phones, so I don't know that they necessarily need a chip to follow us. They're already following us. They know where we are if we have a cell phone. Now, the balancing act for business and HR. This is it. With all of what I said before, how do you now sift through all that is out there to arrive at the truth? How do you do that? Which messengers should you pay attention to? Good question. How do we help our people, our human resources, navigating the deluge of information, misinformation in the virtual space? I have a few suggestions for you. Now, begin by highlighting the outcomes. Lockdowns, we don't like them, do we? No. Job losses, business closure, the rising death toll, not just in Jamaica, but around the world. Families torn apart by vax versus anti-vax. And I'm going to surprise you later if you think that I am either vax or anti-vax. An overwhelmed healthcare system. Just look at it. Just look at it together in order to find out how we must proceed. Look at what we're facing. You and I are facing. When I started, I thought, oh my goodness, I could do a virtual. You know, I could operate virtually because I just started my businesses in April this year. And I thought, you know what? I'm a public speaker. I can speak virtually. I can do change management virtually. And then a customer called me and says, I need a team building workshop. And we have rented out a big premises for it, and we need you to come. What should I do? Say, oh, no, you call somebody else. I am totally virtual. And lose my client? No way I was going to do that. And what if the client had said, and please ensure that you're vaccinated because our staff have been vaccinated and that's our policy. Am I going to go at them and say, how dare you? How dare you? No, they are the client. They have their requests. Now, if I don't want or I don't need that business, I can say, okay, I'm not quarreling with you. I don't believe in getting vaccinated, so please get somebody else. That's a decision you can make. But remember the implication for you and your business. Now, the next thing you can do as business owners is lead from the front. Step up. Get out of the misinformation and step up and proactively own solutions. What is best for your business? For the line of business you are in, what would work best for you? Is it testing instead of vaccines? Is it testing plus the protocols? Whatever is best, lead from the front. The next thing is energize your human resource by keeping them focused on purpose and vision with contagious positivity. There are too many kumbaya meetings that we have, or quarreling or vexing and all of that. We are not solution oriented. We're just taking in information, and we get confused and we do not know what to do. And we cannot even lead our own people. We can't lead when we don't know which direction we are going. Where are we taking people? This week is over here, next week is over there. That's not good for your business. It's not good for your customers as well. And remember the slide before, the lockdowns and the other things is if we were doing the right things, we would not be there either. We would not be there. Connect and stabilize your team by listening to them, by staying calm and sharing a unifying message. Believe something and share that something. You can't be on the fence. As a business owner, as a leader, you cannot be on the fence. Well, if you are actually saying, I'm not a leader, I am a follower. I follow wherever the news is, whatever. You know what I find funny? When you talk to some of the people, either vax or anti-vax, with their sides of the story, there's only one side to the story. And I don't believe that there's one side to the story. There are people with illnesses that cannot take the vaccine. They can't. So for them, it has to be a different solution. Their doctors say they can't take the vaccine. I saw on Instagram as well, where this person, some popular person, went and they said, go talk to your doctor before. We're not giving you based on what you told us. Right? So be rational about it. Because if you're not exuding positivity, if you don't have a plan, if you're all over the place like and just complaining, the government this and the government that, that's not a solution. We won't get to a solution that way. Moving quickly, lead from the front, continue. Share your business and HR balance plan. You've got to have one, right? Focus on the science. Science is the reason why we are alive today. I know you're going to say, no, God is the reason why I am alive today. That is true as well. That is true as well. But God has given man knowledge. God has given man knowledge, and man applies science and help us. Remember the research I showed you that vaccine mandates in Jamaica is not new. Then understand the risks. Go to your doctor. Don't let people tell you now that the doctor who you have known for many years, don't trust your doctor anymore. Sometimes we go to the doctor and the doctor tells us one thing and we say we're going to get a second opinion. Do the same. Do the same. We have never put 100% trust in our doctor, but now we throw away our doctor completely. We are now our own doctors. That's what is happening, folks. That's what is happening. And the solutions are not working because people are dying. Challenge outrageous information for or against your position. Yes, there are people who get vaccinated and there's an interaction between something that they have and the vaccine, and they do, some die. Unfortunately, a very small percentage of people die, and some got blood clots and so on. They're studying to find out, but the vast majority of people who take it, nothing happens to them. So we can't throw they said the baby with the bathwater. We can't throw out everything. We can't throw out everything. We have to, the scientists have to keep working to see what needs to happen for those people. And that's why it's important to go to your doctor. If you have a doctor, if you don't have one, find one. Right? The next thing you can do is put a get vaccinated or proof of vaccination and frequent testing policy in place. Sorry, or proof of frequent testing in place. Right? A lot of companies are using that policy in order, their staff members who are willing to get vaccinated, they allow them to get vaccinated, and those who are not, they say, okay, you get tested every 3 days and you produce a negative test and we're fine with that. That's it. Choice. Because as I said, the vast majority of us may be able to take the vaccine, but not everyone. So there has to be choices, and then lead by example. When you do something, share it with your team. Do not be afraid to share it with your team, what you have done. Now, the balancing act, therefore, is get the right information, interpret that information, and act on it. So, my approach, my goodness, I'm going to be on Facebook, they say, and YouTube. Anyways, my approach. I got vaccinated. I did. And let me share why with you quickly. My whys. I listened to the experts and accepted that I did not know what I did not know. I sought clarification from the right sources, my doctors. I go to medical journals that are online and I read the for and I read the against what I have. I adjusted my mindset to being solution oriented, not complaining, not confusion, but what is a solution, Desrine, so that your business can thrive? Last week, Wednesday, I had to go into an organization to do a change management workshop. It was good to be standing before the people in my mask, did all the protocols and so on, but I felt just a little bit more safety knowing that I was protected by the vaccine. Now, you may have done a negative COVID test, put your mask on and obey the thing and you feel the same way. You have a choice. That's what I'm saying. You don't have to do what I did. Right? I challenged and blocked misinformation. I had to do it. When somebody tell me that they're going to send me something about, oh, the vaccine is going to damage my gut gene, I said, thank you, but no thanks. I have done my research, real research, and I'm satisfied. You have to take a position for yourself and for your business, and you have to be an example to your people. I respect the choices of others. It is their life. I do not quarrel with somebody who is anti-vax, do not want to wear a mask, do not want a social distance. I just tell them that, but you can't come in my space. So let's agree that you have that right, and I'm okay with it. It's your life. Don't quarrel with people. Give them options. Other reasons I got vaccinated. I have experience with vaccines. I have a lot of vaccines in my body. I was going to China in 2018 and I lost my immunization card and I had to take over almost everything. And I'm still here. I know the risk of being vaccinated versus not being vaccinated. You see, when I talk to my doctor, I have lupus, so and I have had a lung infection in the past. I'm also asthmatic. So if that comes my way, I need something special because my immune system is not going to help. It's an autoimmune disease that I have. So I know what the risks were if I wasn't vaccinated. You need to find out what the risk is. You need to talk to your people about their risk and discussing their risks with the right person, their medical person. I weighed the risk and decided which vaccine was right for me. You have vaccine choices as well. I decided which vaccine was right for me. I needed to satisfy the request for in-person engagement. My business is important to me, it's my livelihood. I do not want it to fold. And I did not act on fear, I acted on information. Not fear that my business would fail, I acted on information. I need to travel for business. My business is not local, I have collaborators overseas as well. So I need to be able to travel for business and also for pleasure. I still like exploring the world. Now, you may not be so you want to just go ahead, get yourself tested frequently so that your customers can be satisfied, do the protocols, the hand sanitization, the social distancing, etc. That is fine as well. No issues at all. We have choices. And you'll be surprised, I do not believe the vaccine is a mark of the beast, will change my DNA, will cancel my gut gene, or result in mind control. Now, if somebody who believes that, that's a different matter. That is why they'll make another choice. But remember, you're making that for yourself, and you're an example for the people in your business, and they're going to follow your lead. So your messaging, whatever decision you make, must be very, very clear. And we should not be expecting persons to do things that we are not willing to do ourselves. My advice to business owner, therefore, as a leader, an influencer, pay attention to your words and actions. It is absolutely important. Balancing HR and business requires a decision. You've got to make a decision. What are you for? What are you against? And then make a choice based on that. Balancing requires taking responsibility for the success of your business. And that means you're going to take risks and sometimes you're going to have failures. You may lose some of your people based on the decision that you take. That's a risk that you're taking, but you have that choice. Balancing is asking for and accepting help from the right people. Make sure the person that you're talking to have a balanced perspective, like myself. I have a balanced perspective about COVID-19. Balancing means asking the right questions and listening in order to understand what your people are saying and why they have the opinions that they have. If you do not listen carefully and understand, you cannot advise and you cannot share valuable information with them. You've got to listen to them. Balancing means providing options within your mandate. Whatever mandate you come up with or policy you come up with, right? It could be negative tests versus vaccine, but it must also include, until we break the neck of this thing, consistency with applying the protocols. Ladies and gentlemen, my solutions to balancing job versus job is leaders getting the right information, sharing that information with their team in a positive way, giving them options. For your businesses to survive also, you need to look at your market. What are they on your clients and your customer? What does it demand? What does it require of you? And act accordingly. Fear and misinformation will see the folding of many businesses and the death of many persons. We must act. We must do something. And you are strategically placed as leaders to influence others. I encourage you to use your influence wisely. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Desrine, for that very, very informative presentation. I made sure that I took down some notes, even though I'm not a business owner or anything of the like for that matter, but it's so important for us to be able to strike a balance. And I certainly love the information that you shared at the back there, your advice to the business owners in terms of being able to balance. And just to pull out a few words out of it, it's going to take leadership. It's going to take sharing the right information and doing so positively while providing options for the persons that are in your employ. So thank you so much for sharing that. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat at the moment, but I had a question. What's the God gene? I've never heard that one before.
Right. So there's a video spreading on social media that everybody has a God gene, and that is what the vaccine is intended to, neutralize, that everybody becomes evil and the entire world becomes evil and all of that. And people actually believe these things.
Wow.
Right. People actually believe these things. And I want to add to that as well. Even when you say to people, okay, but I'm vaccinated and I'm okay, I never had any issues. Just consider this. With all my issues, I never had any issues with the vaccine. I didn't have chills, first dose or second dose. I didn't have lightheadedness or anything. And some people do have that, depending, you see, because I've been working on immune system building, maybe that is why, but some people may have some chills, they tell you what it is. But even when you tell them that you're vaccinated, they say, are you sure they didn't just give you water to fool you? Yeah, so that is how bad things have gotten. And that is why I'm saying to the business owners, you are also an influencer.
Yes.
You can influence your customers, but remember, people are now asking for a level of safety that they've never asked for before. Yes. And so when you think about, don't just think about yourself, think about your livelihood and make the best decision for you. Make a budget. If you're going to go the frequent testing way, then you have to have a budget for that. How you're going to do that?
Because that frequent testing is very expensive.
It is expensive.
Yes.
It is expensive. So, but you know, that's how it is.
It is, right. So I saw a question coming from Kadeem Gray, and she's asking, do you think the risk of losing your staff is greater by enforcing a vaccination mandate?
I don't know, and I don't think so. You see, one of the things that is happening now is that people need to be educated. People need to be educated. And if we have a vaccine mandate, one of the best ways in this environment to do is to capture yourself on video taking your vaccines. And you're going to use that as the influencer. So don't ask people to do what you're not prepared to do. You need a messaging, a strong messaging, a strong demonstration of faith in what you are recommending. Right? There's a lot of people who say, I'm not against the vaccine, I just don't know, I'm waiting. Right? Those people are still open. But we need to reach them before they get closed because they're getting so much misinformation. So I don't think so. I think that if you have the right strategy, and you give options as well. So you say, there's a vaccine mandate. The preference is to have everybody vaccinated, but if not, you do so and so. The costing that you spoke about, Sansia, may just help some persons to make the right decision for them.
Right, absolutely. All right, thank you so much, Desrine. I hope you will be able to stick around with us while Dr. Malcolm comes with his presentation, and then maybe we'll have some more questions at the end of Dr. Malcolm's presentation. So I'm going to hand over to Dr. Malcolm. He is going to be speaking to us about workplace dispute management implications of the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's over to you, Dr. Malcolm.
Good morning to you, Sansia, and to all the viewers who are on. I hope I'm being well heard. Yes? Are you hearing me well?
We're hearing you loud and clear.
Well, you know, I'll pick up on something which Desiree started with, the question of research, because I think it's very instructive. For me, I am schooled in research. I teach and work in a research discipline. And law by its very nature is research oriented. And in that context, one of the things that we learn from day one is that you can only get to a proper place where views are allowed to contend and decisions can then be made after. As a lawyer, there are a few things I learned very early. I learned that as a common law lawyer, I function in what we consider to be an adversarial discipline. And what that means is not that you're fighting with each other, but that you're allowed to state and defend your respective positions. And then you have an independent arbiter who is then able to make a decision by reference to the better of the views that are presented. And that for me is critical. You also learn very early in the law discipline that law is a discipline of linguistic analysis. And it is critical at this time because, for example, just the very expression jab for me is problematic because jab as I know it is a banking expression. Is a boxing expression. And in that context, it speaks to people who are pugilists and fighting and the rest of it and so on. So that for me is quite unfortunate in its expression as well. And I think we need to move away from that to something else, which I will get to in a minute as to why I'm saying all of this. The other thing, of course, that you learn as a lawyer very early is that it is possible to have the same information, including case law presented, and for persons to come to exactly different opinions by reference to the exact same case law and by reference to the exact set of facts. In fact, that's what we do every single day. There is a case and one person is saying John Brown chopped and killed the other. The other is saying, no, I did not do it. And that is the nature of the law. It is also the nature of what we do that you want to move persons away from this pugilistic or adversarial scope to something which becomes a lot more, in recent times we speak a lot more about it, something which is a lot more, much more conciliatory by nature, and where persons are prepared to have discussions which are driven by fact, driven by data. And in my own context, I'll take that a little further to say my own training in research and my own application of it always relies on what we call the PRES formula, P-R-E-S, and that's an acronym for this. You must, whenever statements are being made and positions stated, have a clear position or point. That must be supported by clear reason, must then be followed by supporting evidence, which is the E, and then you will have a summary, which then encapsulates all of what is there. And for example, in my case, I'm not a doctor and I don't, well, I have a PhD, but I certainly am not a medical doctor. But surprise, surprise, I have actually written a paper on science which has been published in a peer-reviewed medical journal. I don't know many persons who can say that, being non-doctors themselves, but I have. And I know that there are many doctors around who cannot claim that privilege. So it's an interesting thing. I have been vegan for 30 years or thereabouts, and I buy nothing and eat nothing unless I read the labels. So that idea that you simply take something, my own doctor is himself a vegan, and by living the life I speak to, I will never go to a doctor who drinks or smokes. I simply won't. I don't do it myself, and I'm not going to do it. So I think we need to sometimes step a little back and understand that as we try to convince others, particularly where the information being presented has its several gaps. We've seen Dr. Fauci that every person speaks about all the time, saying that the science is evolving. We have seen him as recently as a couple of weeks ago. I saw it myself on CNN. He was on CNN together with Sanjay Gupta on the Anderson Cooper show. And he said this when asked the direct question by Sanjay Gupta, who is not an anti-vaxxer by any means. Sanjay Gupta said to him directly, Dr. Fauci, the evidence that has emerged, his words, not mine, indicates clearly that those persons who have recovered from COVID and have antibodies protection are better protected than persons that are vaccinated. What say you? Dr. Fauci's answer was this. He does what lawyers would be happy about. He hemmed and he hawed, and then he said this. well, you know, that question, the data is clear, but it requires further discussion. I have never heard of scientists of any repute saying that they're going to be dealing with discussion. They speak about investigation, and that's the research discipline. So what we need to do as we're taking these matters into consideration is to understand that there are people who justifiably have different views. And my view that I've just expressed has nothing to do with my personal status or my own views on whether I should be vaccinated. I simply am schooled in a process, and I genuinely believe as a lawyer that views are supposed to contend. And I don't think there's anybody, whether they're vaccine hesitant, in favor of vaccine or anything, who can say without any doubt that the science is settled and we're clear on it. So we need to understand that. So it is true that when people are making decisions, they will make them by reference to their own personal circumstances and by reference to the data they have. And I don't think for any moment that I'm in any position to tell, notwithstanding my own approach to research and notwithstanding that I have up to a PhD in research, to be able to tell anybody that what they do is less capable of being considered research than what I do. I would never do that because I understand that research does not quite work like that. And I've done enough of it, including supervising people's dissertations in research and the rest of it, to know that. So I wouldn't go down that road at any level at all. The truth is, we are in a difficult position and people have to be making difficult choices, including businesses. And at the end of the day, I will say this as well, that as early as March of last year, I published something out there looking at business continuity and related issues, something that was published in the Jamaica Observer, but more even broader than that, in the Commonwealth Lawyer, looking at the COVID-19 implications for business development and continuity of business and so on. I've done it. I've done the research and I've published things on it, internationally as well as locally. So I've gone down that route. But having said that, when we get to the vaccination, and I know you cited earlier an opinion that was written for the Bar Association, and if you noted the wording of it, it said that it is not likely that the court will find that a vaccine mandate is unconstitutional. And the very use of the word likely there, it is not unlikely, in fact, which was even worse than that. The use of the wording there tells us that something is not clear. And as lawyers, we use that type of language. I've been a lawyer now for 25 plus years. I understand the coding for lawyers and I teach people to become lawyers. And that coding tells me that as a lawyer, you're effectively protecting what they call your assets, right? Because you're using language which give you a sufficient disclaimer. And that is the nature of what was there. So we have to be honest when we're taking these things. And as a lawyer, I think it behoves us to do that, because the moment we put things out where people then start finding gaps in it, then our own integrity and what we present becomes questionable. And I think it is important that we don't go down that road too far. Now, in the context of the workplace, and I think that's the thing, and behold, I was not here to speak about whether or not vaccines should be mandated or not, but I think it's a hot topic and it has arisen. Should people be vaccinated? Quite frankly, I'm not sure what the position is, because that requires a lot more thought than we have given. In the context of Barbados, for example, the Honorable Attorney General Dale Marshall sought and received what I consider to be a very well-produced opinion that was written by Leslie Haynes, Queen's Counsel. And disclaimer there, Leslie Haynes, when the firm was then Motley Haynes, the Motley in that being Elliot Motley, the father of the current Prime Minister, I did my internship with them. And I understand the quality of the work that Leslie does. And at clause 3.8 of his opinion, this is what he said, that while it is unlikely that in appropriate circumstances, the court will find a vaccine mandate to be out and out bad, right? This is what he said. He said, however, whether it is government policy or policy in the private sector, anybody who decides to go down that road should also understand that they take on liability implications. And if they enforce a policy and persons were to then become sick as a result of provably as a result of the vaccine, then they should also understand that they take on the obligation of taking care of those persons, which I think is reasonable. And when you find environments such as we speak about the US and so on, there are compensation funds that are put in place. There's some other jurisdictions that have none. Is that a matter that should also be out for debate when we're considering these options? Yes, there is a real risk that persons who are coming into environments where they are likely to be interfacing with others could infect them. However, the research has also said, and again, I'm not a doctor, that persons who have been vaccinated have no less viral load and capacity to infect others with COVID than persons who are unvaccinated. And that is research which is well known and out there. How do we engage with that research? How do we engage with that? And as I'm saying, I am not the doctor, but I also will say that it does not take, you don't have to be a chef to criticize the cooking. So I don't have to be a doctor to be able to say, I am interested in what I'm about. I've heard Professor Figueroa, for example, say that you should not take the vaccine unless if you are allergic to any of its ingredients. The question I have for him, not for me, I'm not the doctor, is if you're saying so and you're a doctor advising for the advancement of a vaccine, can you, the doctor, tell us what the ingredients are so I will know whether or not I'm allergic to any of its ingredients? Are those reasonable questions to ask? Of course they are. And I think we have to be careful when we go down this path that we don't start preaching too much and we don't start operating in an environment as though everything is crystal clear. I would dare say the environment is more clear as mud than it is clear as crystal because the science is emerging and we're seeing change. So we have to bear that in mind as we go along. Now, what do businesses do? The fact is that, and the Bar Association president spoke to that last night as I saw on TV, he has been speaking to it. And the position is that depending on the environment that you're in, it may well become more appropriate for you to be vaccinated than in others. So the approach then, which is being suggested even through the Bar Association, is that we need to take a more nuanced approach to this issue. And I would say that as we take that nuanced approach, it is appropriate for us to do a number of things. One is to ensure that we are more cognizant of contending views and how to deal with them. The other thing that I think we need to do is to have an effective system of tracking people who are vaccinated as well as those who are not vaccinated. There are persons, for example, who may be vaccinated thinking they have a significant level of protection and they don't. How many persons, for example, are required or themselves voluntarily engage in a process of doing antibodies testing after having been vaccinated to test whether or not they're vaccinated? I am aware, and I'm not talking about what I read. I'm aware because I've seen data to say it. Data coming from the medical lab that has said somebody I know of, fully vaccinated, went to do an antibodies test and had 0 antibodies in her system, 0, and she's not alone. How do you explain those? We know of a situation in Germany where there was a nurse giving people saline solutions and calling it vaccine. What does that mean? Is that something that we should be concerned about? I don't know. But I'm saying these are real questions. What I also know is that we've had a period now of about 2 years where persons have been talking the vaccine and talking all sorts of things related to COVID. But what we also know is that the private sector, who are very geared to pushing a number of things, we haven't seen research funding being made available to do what, for example, they're doing in England at the moment, which is to go out and follow people to see how their predisposition to catching COVID, how likely it is to affect different categories of persons in how badly it affects them and so on and so forth. And those are real issues. And I think if we're being science-driven, we have to understand, one, that one size never fits all. We also have to understand that different demographics respond differently to different things. And so science says, and science also tells us, if we're going there, that those persons who said the world was flat round at one point were killed because they did not follow the science that said it was round. It was flat at the time that it was represented. So there are those things, and I am not an anti-vaxxer. My history is quite different, quite frankly. I have 2 yellow fever certificates that are valid because I had to take one in Johannesburg. On my way to Zambia, they told me if I didn't take it, I couldn't come back into Johannesburg, blah, 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 and all of those sorts of things. I do that. And I am in favor of the vaccine, strangely enough, being used in appropriate circumstances. But I think what persons are concerned about is to have a proper conversation around mandates and how it is to work, if at all. And that is something that we have to get. Now, getting to the core of where I think I fit into this conversation is this. I am trained as a lawyer, but I consider myself to be a dispute management practitioner. And I've taken that view and held that position now for upwards of 15 years. Now, the idea there is that we're talking about job or jab. And we're talking about persons who are in favor of and those who are against vaccination and so on. And for me, what you have arising there is a conflict saying I am for and a conflict saying I am against. I mean, the conflicting positions are. Now, what we learn in mediation, for example, and other forms of conciliatory dispute settlement is this, that when persons are in those positions where they're conflicting positions, what you need to do is to try to get to an understanding of what their positions are. And having heard them, you try to assist them to get to a point where they can come up with solutions which are in their mutual best interest. Because at the end of the day, even when you read the legal opinions that are out there, whether you look at it in the context of the OECS, in the context of Barbados, or even what has now been said in the context of Jamaica, they're saying you have to look to see what the value is, because if you're going to ask persons to move away from established constitutional rights, which is that position, established position, you must then show what the value is in the grand scheme that requires that they depart from positions that they think they're entitled to. So you're moving away from entitlement to a position of saying this is where we're going. But if we're going to take that approach and take the dispute management approach to it, it is one which requires reason. It is one which requires mature dialogue. And it is one which eschews, says we should get rid of anybody trying to preach to anybody. Because we all know that you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. And unfortunately, a lot of the discussion we've heard on both sides of the debate is more in the nature of vinegar than it is in the nature of honey. And if that is what is happening, we are never going to get to that point of understanding the conflict, one, understanding the reservations persons may have on either side, and then getting to a solution which is viable. And the worst thing any of us could do is preach our way to acceptance, only to find that the evolving science then goes against it, because that in Jamaican context is where we'll get the hatter claps. And I don't think any of us want that. So I think we need to step back a bit, understand that there's need for ongoing and constructive dialogue, while at the same time being responsible and understand, as I do, that the vaccines are valuable and that there is a place for vaccines. And I would be the last to tell anybody, because I can't afford to tell them that they should not, in an appropriate vaccination required environment, say, I'm not going to take it, then what happens if they lose their jobs and so on. There's several implications that are out there. And I think that is for that reason why we need to be careful as we craft our strategy going forward, and as we look at it, that we don't start preaching and we don't start going beyond what I think we should do, which is to try to understand others, try to walk miles in their shoes or even inches, and then try to understand what viable solutions there may be, knowing that there are horses for courses and that one size never fits all. And I think that is what I hear a lot of people calling out for. And unfortunately, in this conversation, we hear a lot of people being labeled. You're anti-vaxxer, you're this, you're that. Labels never help. Labels have a way of ostracizing. They have a way of allowing people to strengthen their positions rather than listen to reason. And I think in all of this, as we move persons to a position which I think may be viable, which is that vaccines are appropriate and can be used, we need to do it by reference to reason. And we need to do it by doing this, by understanding that the least of us are as able to understand themselves. And if it is that those of us who are in a position of preaching and a position of leading are not able to connect with those that we're trying to reach out to, it means we're not doing a good job of it. As a teacher, I know that while there are students who may not be ready for the teacher, it is also true that the teacher must make him or herself ready for the students and find effective ways to reach them. And if you're not doing that, it cannot simply be all about the student. It must also be something about the teacher as well. So that is where I think we need to get, and the discussion I think we have to get back is to say, look, if we're to give takeaways from this, I'd say, look, I don't think it is appropriate for any of us to write off the vaccines and to have all sorts of bad labeling about them. It is true that a lot of us have taken lots of vaccines in our lives without knowing it, but I'd also say times have changed. 20 years ago, there is no patient I know or no person I know who would be going to the doctor without going there to say, doctor, I am feeling a pain, tell me what is wrong. Now, everybody I know, myself included, if I'm going to the doctor and I have a pain, let's say a swelling in my right leg, I Google first, look at what it is, and then I go to the doctor to say, doctor, I'm seeing something. My own research tells me that this is what it might be. Can you tell me what it is? That is the approach we all take. And as a lawyer, I can tell you the same thing. Clients come to you, and when they come to you, they say, well, I have this transaction to do. I have gone to legal Zoom. I have gone to whatever. This is what I think is appropriate. In fact, I had an interesting case the other day. There's a transaction I had to do. And there was this client who came to me and said, well, here's what you need to do. I have already done it. And I have also prepared your statement of account. All you need to do is sign it and collect your money. Literally, that's what he did. So he not only did the work for me, he actually prepared my statement of account as well. So I'm saying to you that we need to understand that people have evolved in the same way that the science has evolved. And so we need not get to this point of saying, well, there's so many doctors. And what is so wrong with that? What is so wrong with people being so concerned? In fact, it is helpful and good that people are taking more concern about their health. We have more people, for example, walking than they used to. We have more people eating healthily than they used to. When I started this journey of eating the way I do 30 or so years ago, it was a limited number of places that I could go that catered for me. Now I travel the world and I simply Google happycow.com and I can find a restaurant in my area that caters to vegans and vegetarians. That was not the case 15, 20 years ago. I could tell you that. So we have evolved and people are catering more to the discriminating needs. And there's a recognition as well that more and more people are more concerned and using the tools available to them to find information. And it is also true, as I said, I am not a doctor, but I have actually published a medical related paper in a peer-reviewed medical journal. How do you explain that? Simply because what I learned from when I was in high school is that if you have information, you can write by reference to it and make proper analytic considerations. Once you have done what I have done, which is to understand research method and how to write. I know how to read, I know how to write, and I know how not to count words, and there's a difference, of course, between counting words and reading. You count words, John Brown said, reading is comprehension and analysis, and a lot of us don't do that very well. And I think we need to move to that other level and don't get into this era of disparaging persons by saying, oh, you're not this, you're not that. So what? We need to listen to each other and we need to understand that anybody who comes to us have their legitimate concerns as much as we do. And their views are as important as ours. So while we are here, myself included, saying vaccination is good and can be used, we should not vilify it. We also have an obligation to listen to others and to ensure that the positions that we're taking are positions which are well considered and they take the voice in. I served in another country in a different capacity. I was Attorney General in one country for a while. So I'm also close to the policy-making process. And I understand from that level that one of the things you have to do when you're considering policy is to understand this, that when you do stakeholder analysis, there are important stakeholders and there are influential stakeholders. Guess. Influential stakeholders will usually trump important stakeholders simply because of their positions of influence. And that is well known. So don't ever think that because a position comes out or a policy is derived, it is necessarily indicative of what is most important or even what is most capable of being verified. It very often is a reflection of who had the greater level of influence in the policymaking process. So there are those things which we all know or should know that influence things that happen. So when we go there, the question at this time for me is, what are the critical things that we need to bear in mind? How do we get out of the rut that we are in? How do we move forward? And how do we do it in a way which is credible and does not, unfortunately or otherwise, forget voices or allow voices to be there? Because what we don't want is a fester. If you get a fester and sore foot, it's only a matter of time before the doctor going to have to cut off the foot anyway. So let us avoid that happening and find effective ways to stop things from getting there. Let us cauterize issues as they arise, and let us find a way to say, let me listen, notwithstanding that I have myself done my own research, notwithstanding, but let me hear you. Because very often I teach, and every year that I take in new batches of students, I learn something from them, very often, which disrupts what I thought I knew. And that's every teacher anywhere in the world will tell you that. What does that mean? It means that even persons who you think you know more than very often have answers and solutions that you may not yourself have had. So let us get to that point of not taking this view of saying, well, I have done my research, it is all good because I have done it. I suppose other people could say the same thing as well. So having said that, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am more than willing and happy to address some of the questions that you may have. And the one thing I'll just add all of this, I'm not against vaccination. In fact, I'm for vaccinations. But I say that I am also one who believes in reason, believes in dialogue, and believes in views being able to contend, because that is my learning, that is what I've been exposed to, and that is the only way I know how to live. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Malcolm. Indeed, a very sober presentation, and it just follows on the trajectory of what Desrine said earlier, you know, having that mature dialogue. So it's just really a continuation of what she said. So I really want to thank you for sharing with us this morning from your perspective. Of course, the chat has lit up with questions, so they're pretty long. I'm gonna try to see how best I can read through it, and hopefully you will understand. You'll grasp what I'm saying, because it's a really long question. So someone is saying, a company created a vaccination policy to be enforced. The company's first approach was to educate and inform, and also get persons comfortable to make the decision to be vaccinated. If the company still has key staff who are not vaccinated by the time the policy is enforced, can the company remove them from the medical plan to include life insurance? I think Desrine, you want to take that one?
Okay, so the policy is about everybody to get vaccinated. Is that the policy?
Right. So the company created the policy that everybody should, but by the time the policy was they're ready to enforce, they still had some key staff who had not yet taken the vaccination. So they're wondering if it's okay for the company to remove them from the medical plan to include their life insurance.
No, so that's a one-sided. Again, remember my presentation, right? In any policy that you're going to come up to, you must have options, because not everybody can be vaccinated. Not everybody can be vaccinated. And so when you have the policy, okay, I educate you, as Dr. Malcolm was saying, it's one position. I educate you, and so now you know, so now you act on this. But what about what they also know from their side? Right? What about what they also know from their side? So I have been counseling persons, because I've had that question as an HR consultant. My clients have asked me, how do I formulate a policy? And the first thing I ask them, why are you starting with a policy? You see, policy connotes that we're not communicating. We're not communicating. That is why I started by saying, how did we get here? Yeah, how did we get here? If the conversation is an honest one, and I encourage organizations to go on a listening. Remember what I said? Balancing means asking the right questions and listening in order to understand what your human resources are saying and why they have the opinions they have. That's one of the things I had to my advice to businesses. Because in the climate that we are, we're already there. And the fact is, a vaccine mandate without option is going to be problematic, in my view, because as I said, not everyone is recommended for vaccination. Now, the company can say, I will send you to my doctor, because companies will say that, I'll send you to our doctor, and if our doctor say that you can take it, you can take it. But what extensive medical test does that doctor have, your history and all of that? And so I think, I don't know the legal, Dr. Malcolm can speak to the legal aspects of that. But as I've said before, the vax versus anti-vax, a policy that comes out and says just 100% vaccination is going to be problematic, in my opinion.
Okay.
If I may jump in quickly there, if I may jump in quickly, Sansia, and Desiree is correct there, because once you take this approach of my way or the highway, that is where courts would probably have a difficulty if you don't make, because courts operate on the basis of proportionality, reasonableness, and so on in these contexts, right? Once you start engaging constitutional rights. And I want to add to the picture, there is a law professor at George Washington University, and they had implemented, and there are others that have been emerging since in terms of case law. They had implemented a policy there saying all of their faculty, and he's a faculty member, and students must be vaccinated, must. No ifs, no buts, no maybes, right? That's a policy they had implemented. And he decided, he had in fact had COVID, recovered, and he decided he was going to challenge the policy, and he filed a lawsuit against them. And when he did that, he came with the evidence that showed that he had done the immunologists and all the other people and had his antibodies tested that showed that he was in no worse position, in fact, in a better position than persons who had vaccinated by reference to the antibodies ranges and so on and so forth.
Right.
And behold, by the time the company was ready to proceed in the matter, the university that is, with the best legal advisors in the world, and as lawyers, we know what the code is for that. What did they do? They settled with him and told him that he would be exempted from the vaccination policy. Why did they do it? As a lawyer, I can tell you the answer. When you know you don't have a case and there's a precedent that is going to be established against you, you settle. Right. So what the code is that they recognize that his case was stronger than theirs. So I'm saying that we have to be mindful that there are instances where persons are going to come and are going to present viable cases that could require them to be treated differently. Of course, there are issues that people are going to take in relation to, travel, and there are a number of countries now that are introducing vaccine passports and so on for travel purposes. And travel is a personal choice. You decide to travel or you don't, right? And that is something, and again, I'm not going to tell somebody that where your income and everything else relies on something, you should not take a decision, because I think that's suicidal. So I think people have to make personal choices by reference to what they do, by reference to where they want to go. And we have to bear in mind as well, that whereas, for example, somebody in Jamaica, in the territory of Jamaica, could challenge a mandate that is in place, a Jamaican has no right to constitutional protection in the US. Right. So if the US introduces a policy that says this is what we need for persons coming in who are not Americans, then you are very well obliged to follow it. Yes. And so we have to bear that in mind. The other thing I should have touched on earlier, which I need to remind, from a social scientist perspective, even though I'm not one, but I've done enough work in the area. We hear that there are lies, there are damn lies, and there are statistics. And I always say that when we see information presented, we need to understand that depending on how it's nuanced, depending on the biases involved and all the other things, you have to be careful that you don't just take information and use it and utilize it, because you have to understand that research is never done without inherent biases included. And so analysis always requires that you bear in mind that there are lies, there are damn lies, and there are statistics. Right. Because information needs to be properly culled and need to be properly distilled before you can make effective solutions by reference to them and make effective analytic findings, right?
Right. Thank you, Dr. Malcolm. I'm going to steal that lies, damn lies, and statistics. I want to follow up though on the same question about the medical plan and life insurance. Now, remember when you were as an employee, when you were getting employed, the life insurance medical plan was part of the package, as it were. And when you were coming in, COVID was not a consideration. Is it legal then to pull those benefits based on you not being vaccinated or whatever else you choose to do within this context? Is it okay to do that?
Okay, so my experience in HR has been that when you employ someone, you're going to put them on a medical, they have to do a medical.
Right.
right? They do a medical and they pass the medical. No, we're in a pandemic, and that is why I say novel issues call for novel approaches. Again, to drop someone from your medical plan because you think that they're going to be subject to death does not make any sense. Because the risk is no greater to the employee than it was before. The person could have had an accident and die. The person can have COVID and recover. You understand what I'm saying? The person can be infected with COVID and recover. And then life insurance is a death benefit. I know that some policies pay for testing up to a certain point. So there's a limit. So there is no need, there's no need to escalate because of COVID. I don't know the legal side of that, but just looking at from a practical basis, life insurance doesn't work that way. So I should not be called now and says, you know what, I want to know if you're vaccinated or you'll be rated. I already have my insurance. Now they can have new requirements for new people coming on, right? They can do that. Organizations can always adjust their policies, but the people who are already in, I think it is going to be very problematic for them to say, if you don't show that you are vaccinated, you're coming off the plan, because there's no added risk. The plan was always, it is based on utilization that your premiums go up or down. So remember, the forecast a risk overall for the entire based on age, that, and that, right? There are many things out there that can kill you, not just COVID. So if they just zero in on COVID, I don't think there's a reasonable policy that could really make that pass, the sniff test.
I agree. Thank you. All right, Dr. Malcolm, this question came in for you. I would like some clarity on the definition of take care of. When Dr. Malcolm said that it is reasonable for the organization to take care of the employee if they fall ill subsequent to taking the vaccine as a result of enforcing a policy. So I guess they want to understand what does take care of mean?
No, I think I did not represent it properly. Let me clarify what I should have said, even if I didn't say it.
Right.
What the opinion at clause 3.8 of Leslie Haynes said is that if it is that an employer, be it a government entity or a private sector entity, were to introduce an effective, and when I say effective, I mean one that passes the legal test, right? Policy for mandatory vaccination. They do so understanding that if you require somebody to do something, you also take the liability of any ill effects flowing from what you have required them to do, yes? So if, for example, let's say the person suffers a heart attack, which is clearly shown to be related to the vaccine, under a policy that you mandated, then the costs related or flowing from that must be costs which are borne by the employer. And I think the idea going forward, if you were to look at it in the context of how these legal matters are concerned, could also include going forward to give them going forward benefits depending on the debilitation that they suffer, right? So it is going to be a situation where in that case, the person would have an appropriate policy. And in fact, if we go here, the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Health here, some weeks ago was asked, I think it was by Zara Burton from 18 Degrees Northwood, initially raised the question, and then it came back up subsequently, and he answered this. The question was, has Jamaica implemented, as a country, implemented a compensation fund? And the answer was, no, we haven't. And what he then said is that, well, in the event of injury which is shown to be linked to COVID, then you would have your regular rights, which includes going to court and suing on that and having the court adjudicate upon it and then make a decision. What we do know is that the court process can be notoriously slow, can be.
Yes.
Right? And so there are a number of issues relating to that. So part of the thing here I'm suggesting, if we're to follow what Leslie Haynes' opinion is, which I think is a very good opinion and worth reading, is saying that, look, if you are going to be insisting on something, particularly, as he made the point, in circumstances where you have the evolving science and not everything is clear as day, then you also should be prepared to take on the liability of risks related to what you have done if persons were to follow your mandate and then suffer ill effects as a result of the mandate. Right?
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Malcolm. Now, another question that came in. Given that everything is not clear-cut and we are in a state of emergency, how would it be unlikely than not to find that the vaccine be mandated under the emergency power of government? What is likely to happen in the long run? You got that one, Dr. Malcolm?
It is for me, but let me make my disclaimer again. I am not a constitutional lawyer, don't claim to be one. And I say that deliberately. I am, my area of competence, core competence, is legal aspects of banking and finance. And I am in the area of dispute management, arbitration, mediation, and other things related, which are commercial in nature. So I don't claim, and I really, again, my research discipline tell me that there are unfortunately too many jacks doing what masters should be doing. And I don't like the idea of being a jack of all trades. So I like to limit the views I give with the indication that I am not at core a constitutional lawyer who can tell you all there is about it. But getting back to this question though, of what the emergency situation and what flows from it, I think it requires a lot more consideration. And we've seen things coming out of the bar and others who are much better able than I to speak to some of those risks and what should apply. What I do think, however, is that at the end of the day, the balancing act is always going to be looking at the overall picture. And it is true that while we have individual rights, there are many instances in which those individual rights have to take subject to the common good. That is well settled. However, when you're seeking to move in favor of the common good away from individual rights, that must be done by reference to clear justification for doing that. And it must be done as well by reference to proportionality and everything. And hence why I cited the situation with the George Washington University professor of law, who said, look, I have no problem with vaccination. However, I'm able to demonstrate on the facts and on the evidence that I am better protected than what you're asking me to do. And we have seen in the case of Israel that they're up to booster number 4. When will they stop the boosters? And where do we go from there? So we are seeing emergence and change. Is that an indication that you should not take the vaccine? Clearly not. But it is just one that says, as we do it, we must ensure that those who are most vulnerable and those who are most likely as well. And the question was raised by Desrine earlier. If you're in close contact with people like to do this and so on, then there are issues that may arise. But it is also true that if you were to follow the science based on what they say, the persons who should be most fearful are the unvaccinated being fearful of vaccinated persons making them ill, because the vaccinated persons claim that they're protected anyway, right? So there are those little issues, if you're talking real argument, that can come out. I'm not going down that road except to say that we should be careful, that we understand that even when we devise policies, the best made policies are always those which allow for exemptions and allow for special cases to be dealt with.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Malcolm, you're getting a lot of questions. So the other one is, what is the legal perspective with regards to HR, to an HR department requesting employees to show their vaccination cards, as well as taking a copy of it to work? So I guess HR would want to have a copy of it on file.
I suppose it gets back to something Desiree spoke about. The first place is to get to a point where you develop a policy after effective consultation within your organization. And having developed that policy, you ensure that you act in accordance with it in a way which is transparent and accountable. Now, if it is that the policy that has been developed has not been properly considered, is shown not to be proportionate and so on, then you could have issues. Because I think, frankly, at some point, you are likely to see case law coming out of this, even in Jamaica, where persons challenge for one reason or another, including the way the George Washington University professor challenged. So we're going to see those things happening. So it really is dependent on how well considered the policy was And also, but I can understand though that there's genuine fear. And the genuine fear is, what of my business? What of, because there's also another side to what I've said, which has to be understood. What if as a company, you do not do what you know to be reasonable, and then you cause others to become ill? How then do you deal with that? So there are multiple sides to this, you know. And it is for that reason why I get back to where I started by saying that you have to have a process of mature dialogue and consultation. And in doing that, it is critical that we get more and more persons to understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, why it is beneficial, and how best we are doing it by reference to a process which is accountable and transparent and can pass a smell test at every level. It must look like a duck, it must quack like a duck, and it must ultimately be a duck at the end of the day.
Thank you, Dr. Malcolm. Desrine,
May I add something?
Yes,
I think, and I started by saying that, you know, how did we get here? I think the sad part of these questions is it shows a breakdown in the relationship with organizations and their employees. It really is a demonstration. And also, and Dr. Malcolm touched on it already, there's a bout of selfishness about people that is why I am not vax or anti-vax, because what you find is too extreme. There's no center. There's no center to look at the business. There's no center to look at your own livelihood, right? If this business goes down, the one that you want your employed to, if it goes down, what are the implications? But I do blame leaders, Sansia. I really, really do. And I'm talking to business owners here. As Dr. Malcolm says, what about consultation? That's what I call a listening. Listen to your people, get them involved in the process. The best policies you have are those which you collaborate on people, where people take ownership for it, where their voices are heard in those discussions and they understand the implications of the what, the whys, the where, the where, the when. You see what I mean? But if you go ahead and just get maybe an attorney and then you come and you say, our lawyer help us, if you start there, it's going to be problematic. And I'm an engagement person, right? I'm a human resource employee engagement person. And engagement doesn't happen if the employees not having a good experience with their employers, that they have people that they can talk to. And so these questions are highlighting the one-sidedness. I am protecting myself. This is what I believe. And so if we start there in a discussion, if we start there, instead of being solution-oriented, what we're going to find is exactly what we have now: total confusion and for and against, and there is no center.
And, you know, and we add to that, you know, I think just to add a little bit to that, you know, again, as to policy, we learn very early that policy, the best policy is usually a policy which tries to move from the grassroots up. Yes. Because invariably, that policy is by its nature consultative. Invariably. The process that moves from the leaf down, whatever that is usually one which is dictatorial and is not sufficiently nuanced to deal with what the grassroots require. And the truth is, if you don't get the grassroots on board, you could end up with a problem of implementation, because very often as well, you know, there are times when people will, you know, they say, even in lawmaking, for example, it is one thing to pass a law and it's another thing to enforce it. And the best way to secure enforcement is where people feel that what the solution to be derived is one that they have ownership of, they have a part to play in it, and they understand why it is in their own best interest. And we should never start from a position of thinking that because this person only has no CXCs or no this or no that, they don't have a voice. They do, we all do. And it is instructive that very often we start from this position of thinking, oh, them no. And this them and us thing, this is not the time for it. Yes. And the best work environments are not those where you seek to separate people by reference to levels of education. And you know, there's a thing about book bright. that don't really make sense sometimes. That we think that because people are lettered and so on, I'm always told that common sense is a very expensive commodity. And it is true, but very often that is what you need to get us to a point where we can say, because at the end of the day, there's a story told, and I'll say it quickly, about this man. He went to a number of doctors because he had bulging eyes. And the doctors were giving him all sorts of prescriptions and all sorts of things to wear, to do about the bulging eyes. So he then went to his tailor to get a shirt made. And he told the tailor that his collar size was 16 and a half. And the tailor, having measured, said, where you get that from? Your collar size is 17 and a half. And the man was quarreling and saying, I've always worn 16 and a half. The man said, that's why your eyes have been bulging all this time. So the point is, we have to be mindful that even the tailor there was able to give the man, in and out of quotes, good advice that his very learned doctors were not able to give him, because there was a problem he had. And that is, of course, instructive rather than indicative rather than necessarily true. But the truth is that sometimes we overlook solutions that are viable because we don't like the source, we don't like the messenger. And we should be careful not, as Desrine said earlier, to throw out the baby with the bathwater, or to simply overlook viable solutions because we don't like the messenger. It's always a bad attitude to take.
Thank you so much, Dr. Malcolm. This has indeed been a very balanced conversation, and we see that being commented on in the chat. So we thank you for your comment, Garthia. And so I just wanted to highlight again some of the things that came out of this presentation this morning is that it's going to take good leadership. And so it's very important that as business owners, you take leadership and lead from the front and have a consultative approach, come with the right information and be positive, provide options and solutions, and of course, have mature dialogue with both your employees and the other stakeholders that might also be part of the conversation in your businesses as well. As we're about to wrap up, I just want to give each of our presenters just 1 minute for just some final thoughts. Anything else that you'd want to share with the audience just before we go? So I'll start with you, Desrine.
Yeah, I just want to say that, doctors practice, scientists are learning. It is important that we also kind of be curious, but in a way to learn and to understand what is best for us. It is also important as we look at vaccination versus not being vaccinated, that we understand the importance of trust and respect when we're dealing with people. It is absolutely necessary. If your employees trust you, you say, when you get vaccinated, bring the card, it is not a problem. It is not. You already have their birth certificate, you have their driver's license, you have their TRN numbers, and what is missing, it's really the how we are communicating. It is confusing now, but I'm sure that if we just reset, we need a reset. I know that there's a lot of dependency also on government and looking to government to lead, but we all lead. We all have to take the lead in this and make the best decisions and to collaborate with our people and find the best solutions for our organizations. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. If I may, at this point.
Dr. Malcolm.
Yes, thank you, Sansa. Now, if I were to repeat a few things, and none of them original to me, and in fact, some of them borrowed from Desrine in a sense, I think we're at a point where we need to listen more and need to try to understand others more. We need to recognize that we're all fearful. And fear really is an expression of ignorance. And ignorance in the sense that very often we don't know, and we're not prepared to recognize that we don't know, but instead we get very often in this habit of, well, it is me, I've done this. And there are two sets of fears happening in this vaccination debate as I see it. There is a fear of those who are unvaccinated, many of whom are trying to figure out, is this for me? Will I be making a right decision? And there's nothing wrong. Those are persons that we need to talk to be able to get them to understand why it is either something they should or should not do. But there's, strangely enough, there's also a fear of the vaccinated, some of whom are saying, have I done the right thing by being vaccinated? So it's a strange set of fears that we're dealing with on both sides of the coin. And I think we have to bear in mind that we need to be a little more patient with each other. We need to understand more, as I said earlier, that you always catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. There is no place. We did know what they said about Jesus on the cross and giving the vinegar, right? It is a sign of saying, die, I don't want to help you, right? So we have to be careful that we don't get into this habit of not listening to each other, because very often by not listening, we miss critical cues and we miss valuable information. So let us, I would think, re-engage at the company level and even at the national level with a process of saying, look, we don't all have the answers, but we all want the same common end. Everybody that I speak to wants to live and live happily. We all have that common desire. We do have different views about how we will do that. Some of us are dead wrong. Some of us are very right. Others of us don't know whether we're right or wrong. So the question is, how do we engage in a process knowing that we have a multiplicity of voices and that it is critical for all of us in the interest of vaccination or not, in the interest of crime, in the interest of economic expansion, in the interest of our livelihood as a country, and in all that we do? How do we get to a position where we're able to engage more, listen more, be less critical of others simply because they don't agree with us, and very often agree to respectfully disagree with others? I've always learned, as a final word, that sometimes when you know your truth, you should express it even when people tell you that they don't want to hear you. And I will end by giving a valuable lesson I learned in second form in high school about doing what you know to be right. I was walking across the paddock with Mother Blair. We had a teacher, we called her Mother Blair. Mrs. Blair, we called her Mother Blair. Everybody who went to Monroe knew her as Mother Blair. And I was walking together with her across the paddock to the administrative area. And when we were going, she was walking slightly ahead of me. And when we reached over to the admin building, Mrs. Stevenson, see, I still remember all the names because it stood out so much in my mind, said, Mother, you didn't realize that your zipper was down at the back of her skirt. Mother looked at me and she said, Christopher, did you realize that my zipper was down? And I couldn't answer. I was a little second former, right? So she then turned around and said, zip it up, which I did. And then she gave me invaluable information. She said, next time you see a woman or anybody being carelessly clad, even if she slaps you in the face, you must offer to ensure that she gets out of the position that she's in. And I have traveled the world, literally, in airports and all sorts of things, and go up to people. Some of them look red. Some of them tell me all sorts of things. To say, I kind of see that your zipper is down. And I'm not doing it, and I remember every time it happens. And the reason I mention that is to say that we must live being caring for others and being caring for the well-being of others. And there is no place in that for selfishness, but recognizing, of course, that selfishness is innate. Anybody who tell you that them born altruistic is lying. Every baby that I know when them born, none of them care about the length of labor. They're caring about whether or not they're going to get breasts, right? And that is a nature. We're born selfish. We're taught to be altruistic. And I think we need to carry that learning of altruism into saying that it must be one where we're caring for others. And in that process of caring, understanding that we must listen to each other so we can be part of a common solution rather than part of a divisive process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Malcolm. Thank you, Desrine, for sharing with us this morning. As I said before, this was indeed a balanced conversation. It was a rich conversation, and I'm happy that JBDC was able to host maybe one of the first set of discussions on this very fretful issue, as it were. You know, persons are really concerned as to what is coming and how they'll be able to maneuver what is coming. So we really want to thank you for sharing your wisdom with us this morning. Just a reminder for persons, they've been asking in the chat, will the recording be available to us? Absolutely. It will be available on the JBDC's YouTube channel by about Monday, I think. Yeah. Yes, by about Monday, it should be available. So you can always share it with those persons who you are aware that would wanted to have been here but did not get an opportunity to do so for whatever reason. We also want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again. You have been so faithful to us in terms of dedicating most of your Thursday mornings to joining us on the JBDC Virtual Biz Zone. Again, my name is Sansia Campbell on behalf of JBDC. Thank you very much and see you next time.